So I remember right before I had my second seminar, this was about the biggest period of growth I've ever had in my entire life. And I made a few goals. One of them was that I was going to fill the room with 35 or more people, which, by the way, if you've never had a live event or a seminar, this is very difficult to do, to get 35 people to commit hours of their time. It's a big deal, especially if you don't have a brand, you don't really have that many followers, and you don't have that many people that even know what you're about. You know, it was my second seminar. It's hard to do. The second goal I had was to be able to hypnotize anyone instantly and even make them forget their name. And the third goal I had was to just be able to speak for 3 hours, because that's how long the seminar was, and make it really, really interesting, make people want to be there, want to learn. Well, over the course of the next 3 weeks, I had slept 4 hours a night. I was watching videos on YouTube every day from this guy named Darren Brown. He's one of my favorite hypnotists on the planet. And what I saw him do was just remarkable. I would see him hypnotize people to go to the bank and give him his wallet and their money, and he'd hypnotize someone to become an assassin. He'd hypnotize someone to just rob a bank. And when I started to see these things, my paradigm just completely shifted. I'm like, wow, it must take someone years to get that good. Well, I went out every day and I tried to hypnotize people over and over and over again. And I just kept fucking failing. And finally, I just said, you know what? I'm gonna get someone to go in. And I was at UCLA, and I was about to visit my sister. And before I went to see her, I'm like, the next person I see, I'm gonna hypnotize. And I saw this one girl walking around with some friends, and I said, hey, excuse me. She said, yeah. I'm like, hey, what's your name? And I just took her hand. I said, look at your hand for me. I did what we call a handshake interrupt, and I put her into hypnosis. And all of a sudden, she went to sleep. And I looked at her, and I tried to play it cool and confident, but inside I was literally screaming. Because imagine trying this 1,000 times and it never works, and finally it worked. And I told her when she opens her eyes, she's going to forget her name. And she opens her eyes. I'm like, hey, what's your name? She goes, I know my last name, but I can't remember my first name. And I said, okay, you're wide awake. You feel amazing. That's gone. You're more confident than ever. And then it clicked for me. At that moment, I realized what it took to actually get someone to go into hypnosis. And about 3 days before my seminar, I started promoting it outside at Pierce College. And that's where I was going to college at the time. It's a community college. And I had a tent set up, a booth with some chairs. I had 5 chairs outside. And my goal was to hypnotize people outside, get people really entertained and engaged, and then tell them to come to my seminar. So one of my friends at the time, his name is Ronnie, he walked by me and I said, hey, bro, let me hypnotize you really quick. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah. And I hypnotized him. And I kept him there for about 15 minutes. And a bunch of other athletes that were friends with him, I believe they were football players, they're really big guys, come by and they're like, yo, that's crazy. I'm like, yeah, you guys want to see something? Like, no, we don't want to be hypnotized. I said, no problem. You know, just put your hands out in front of you and I'll show you something cool. And they put their hands out in front of them. And in my mind, I'm like, fuck it. I need people on here. I want to fill this seminar stage. I want to fill the room. And I'm going to make it so these guys go into trance. They put their hands out and I just yank all their arms. I'm like, sleep, sleep, sleep. And they all go into hypnosis right away. And I sit them down next to Ronnie and I start giving him suggestions, and all of a sudden I have a crowd around me of about 40, 50 people watching me. And I'm hypnotizing them, making them do funny things for like 25 minutes. And then Ronnie at this point has been in trance for about 50, 55 minutes, and he starts to come out of trance and he's like, yo, Marcel, get me out of this. And the thing is, when you're in such a suggestible state, what you feel and what they hear will then be absorbed by them, right? They're going to take that suggestion and start to feel it. So all of a sudden, these 3 really big football players and Ronnie are getting really, really mad. And they get up and start charging at me. And I'm like, I'm scared. I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm about to get jumped by 4 people that I hypnotized. And unconsciously, my brain went brrr, because earlier I had given them a suggestion that I had a hypno gun. And every time I shoot them, they go to sleep. So I go like this, brrr, and they all just collapse on the ground. And at that moment, I realized what this was. This wasn't just something that anybody can learn. This was something that, if you mastered, was literally a superpower. And everyone around me started laughing, and they're like, whoa, what just happened? Like, people were in disbelief, and I'm like, let me try something. And I look at a random person standing in the crowd, and I go like this. And they just drop. They just literally went into trance. And I was so mind blown that just by seeing it, they were so suggestible to me at that moment that for 3 years, I not only got really good at it, but I didn't really want to teach anyone how to do this because I knew that in the wrong hands, hypnosis can be too powerful. It's literally, if someone is hungry or driven enough, this is a superpower that can really give you anything in the palm of your hands. And for 3 years, I was debating. I'm like, do I teach anyone how to do it? It took me so much time, so much effort. That is probably the hardest 3 weeks I've ever worked in my entire life to learn how to do this. And I just said, you know what? If I'm able to do this and I feel like in the right hands, people will also do this properly. Because I know that if you learn how to do this, you could change lives on a level that has never been seen before. I mean, it is the most powerful form of change ever. And I created a program called Invisible Influence. Invisible Influence allows you to learn what took me years to master in just a few hours. Now, my only concern was when I released that is that people would use it for bad. And I found that if you have negative intentions, it's actually way harder to hypnotize people. It is way harder to get someone into trance. It's nearly impossible. And I realized that on its own, it will filter people out and allow others, only good people, to come into it. So, you know, it has changed my life drastically. Learning this knowledge has not only taught me so much about myself, but it has taught me about others. It's taught me about communication, about influence, persuasion, at a level that no one can really teach you. People will tell you this is how you sell something. This is how you influence someone. What if you could literally hypnotize someone in any direction you want? Your mom smokes, she doesn't smoke. Your sister has low self-esteem, she's confident. Your friends have a hard time approaching people, not anymore. And that's really what this is. This is a superpower. And if you learn how to do it properly and you get someone who's willing to change, there is no limit to what can happen.